Planning Committee, or PFAC meeting. I'm Ian Francis, representative of the New York State Department of Transportation, and today chair of PFAC. Before we begin the meeting, I want to point out the emergency exit should there be an emergency evacuation. There are 3 exits out of this room, one directly behind you, one further to my left, and one very far to my left. Please listen to the announcements and instructions. If anyone needs personal assistance to evacuate, please notify the staff of NYMTC. NYMTC staff, please raise your hand. Thank you. Now I'd like to begin the meeting with introductions of the members around the table. I'm asking each member to announce who they are, their agency, and whom they are representing today. Beginning with the far end of the table to my left, please speak clearly into the microphone.
Hannah Greenberg, EPA Region 2, representing Regional Administrator Peter Lopez.
Dan Moser, Federal Transit Administration Region 2, representing Regional Administrator Stephen Goodman.
Todd Amani, Federal Highway Administration, New York Division, representing Division Administrator Michael Canavan.
Bob Brickman, representing Nassau County Executive Laura Curran.
Chris Chatterton, Suffolk County, representing County Executive Steve Ballone.
Ann McGrain, New York City DOT, representing Commissioner Polly Trottenberg.
Good afternoon, Jose Rivera, New York Metropolitan Transportation Council.
Julia Seltzer, representing MTA Chairman Joe Lawyer.
Naomi Klein, Westchester County Department of Public Works and Transportation, representing County Executive George Latimer.
Sandra Fusco, Putnam County, representing County Executive Mary Ellen O'Dell.
Pat Gurdon, Rockland County, representing County Exec Ed Day.
Hi, Ted Ritter, North Jersey Transportation Planning Authority, representing Executive Director Mary Amin.
Thank you. By my count, under operating procedures, we have a quorum for today's meeting. We have a long agenda today, so we'll get right into it. Today we'll be given a presentation by Ryan White from the New York City Economic Development Corporation, and the members of PFAC will take several actions on NYMTC's required products, as well as their Title VI program. Now, NYMTC's Executive Director, Jose Rivera, will give a report on their latest activities, followed by the introduction of our guest speaker.
Thank you, Ian. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's PFAC meeting. Since our last PFAC meeting, the members held a special meeting it was last August to adopt the inclusion of the balance of the Hudson Tunnel project, a key component of the Gateway project, into NYMTC's Regional Transportation Plan 2045. Notices have been sent out announcing NYMTC's public comment period for proposed amendments to the federal fiscal years 2017-2021 Transportation Improvement Program. These comment periods, which usually occur monthly, provide the opportunity for public feedback on the proposed changes to the TIP. This comment period begins on Wednesday, September 26th, and ends at 4 p.m. on Friday, October 5th, 2018. The list of projects can be found on our website, www.nymtc.org. We also have 2 upcoming meetings to announce. On September 26th, the Metropolitan Mobility Network meeting will be held at NYMTC at 1 p.m. This working group focuses on the management and operations of the regional transportation system with the objective to make the system safer and more efficient. And on October 11th, the Metropolitan Area Planning, otherwise called MAP Forum, Multi-State Freight Working Group, will hold a meeting in Stamford, Connecticut at 1:30. The agendas for both meetings can be found on our website. Every 4 years, the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Transportation must certify that each Metropolitan Planning Organization, MPO, serving a transportation management area is carrying out the metropolitan planning process in adherence with federal statutes and regulations. The Federal Transit Administration and the Federal Highway Administration will be conducting NYMTC's federal certification review this year, specifically on the week of October 15th is when Federal Highway and FDA will be conducting this certification review. As part of the review, FTA and FHWA are accepting written comments from the public on NYMTC's implementation of the federal transportation planning process until October 31st, 2018. Survey forms have been placed on the chairs and at the sign-in table, giving you the opportunity to provide your written response, and those responses can be given to the federal representatives here today. Or you may submit your comments online through the link that can be found on the survey form. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker. Ryan White is the Director of Freight Initiatives in the Ports and Transportation Department at the New York City Economic Development Corporation. He manages maritime and rail freight planning projects, including the recently released FreightNYC, New York City's latest comprehensive freight plan. Ryan has a master's degree from NYU in urban planning and a Bachelor of Science degree in political science from Santa Clara University. Please join us in welcoming Ryan.
Okay, thank you to Jose and the rest of NYMTC for having me today. I hope you can hear me. I may have to lean over a little bit. Oh.
And technology, great.
Back is going to thank you later. So as mentioned, today I'll be talking about FreightNYC, something that we are very excited about at the city that we released a couple months ago that really is the latest comprehensive freight plan to be released by us in quite a while. And so this presentation will sort of get into sort of how we got to this place, why it's needed, and some of the projects that we hope to implement in the coming years. The New York City region today, I think most of us already know this, but our region over-relies on trucks to move a lot of freight in and out of the city, including consumer goods and construction materials. And congestion is only increasing over time on our highways, bridges, and tunnels. And through our estimates, the freight volume that will be increasing, at least in the city, is forecast to grow by about 70% between now and 2045, which is pretty staggering. A lot of that, of course, being moved by trucks, which we're not necessarily building a lot of excess highway capacity right now, so we've got to put that freight somewhere. The pie chart on the right just shows the existing mode share. I think we've all seen before, showing predominantly trucks moving freight with about 8% maritime and about 3% rail. So really, FreightNYC, the goal is to expand sort of the blue and the yellow pieces of that pie chart. With FreightNYC, the potential is to support and grow freight-dependent jobs in the city. Obviously, as an economic development agency, this is what we're always thinking about, are jobs for New Yorkers. And freight jobs are often very good jobs in the city. By our estimates, there's about 300,000 that are considered freight dependent. This could be anyone working, let's say at the Global Container Terminal on Staten Island, to folks that may be working in Midtown Manhattan in the Wholesale Diamond District. So we think through this plan we can grow those numbers. Also, with FreightNYC, we are seeking to promote environmental sustainability. We know that on a per ton mile basis, rail and maritime freight is better for the environment than trucks, and we think that we've got the space to move freight on our sort of, I don't want to say latent rail lines, but sort of underutilized rail lines, particularly in Brooklyn and Queens, as well as our waterways. We've just implemented NYC Ferry, and that's been a big success thanks to the use of our waterways. We think we can also utilize the waterways for freight as well. And of course on the right is just a picture of the GWB, the nation's most heavily used bridge. See something like 30,000 trucks a day. From a sort of resiliency and redundancy standpoint, that's kind of a scary thing. So again, seeing if we can sort of take future growth and move it to perhaps a barge, I think would be a good thing. So an overview of FreightNYC. It's sort of a project we've been working on at the city for about a year, and it's been a key part and pillar of New York Works, which is Mayor de Blasio's jobs plan that was announced last summer, I believe. And it's a $100 million multimodal strategy to modernize the freight and distribution system of New York City. The goals are to create about 4,000 jobs in transportation, logistics, and distribution. The overall goal of the plan is 100,000, so we're about 4,000 of the 100,000, and that's over 10 years. Also to reduce congestion and improve air quality, again looking at ways to divert freight away from trucks. And the strategies are through maritime investments, rail investments, urban distribution, and clean trucks. And I'll get into each of these in a sec. The image on the right is just the cover of the plan that is on our website. If you just Google FreightNYC, you can find it pretty well. Also on our website, we've got some really nifty videos posted of people who work at, let's say, the Global Container Terminal talking about the importance of freight, as well as folks who work for the New York Atlantic Railway, describing their jobs and why it's important to them and to the rest of the city. So check it out. So these are just some headlines that came out recently once we released the plan. The coverage was pretty good, and folks were pretty excited about it. Obviously, it's well overdue to invest in some of this infrastructure in the city. This is just a picture of the press conference itself that was actually held at the Brooklyn Army Terminal in July. You may recognize some people. It's Congressman Jerry Nadler on the left, our President James Patchett on the top, and then just some union workers on the bottom. So it was about 150 degrees that day, but we survived. It was very, very hot. And with FreightNYC, the plan really is meant to be holistic and thinking about the total supply chain in the city. So we're thinking about how can we change how freight initially gets into the city from the get-go, whether that's moving freight in a in a container on a barge or in a rail car. And thinking as that comes into the city, are there new places that could be stored, or perhaps existing locations that could be enhanced? And so we do have some urban distribution projects as well. And then finally, if it's leaving that urban distribution for a last mile delivery, thinking about can those trucks that are making that delivery be sort of clean, green, safer for New Yorkers, and go places that maybe they haven't gone before. Obviously with the rise of e-commerce, this is pretty important. I think IKEA just announced a big plan to ensure that I think New York is one of 5 cities that all of their deliveries will be zero emission in the coming years, which is pretty exciting. So getting into the findings of FreightNYC, I'm sure many of us know this, but the city remains an important maritime gateway for commerce. We have 3 critical facilities in the city, one of which is on Staten Island, GCT, Red Hook Container Terminal, of course, in Brooklyn, and then the South Brooklyn Marine Terminal, which we've recently reactivated for a lot of bulk and break bulk cargo in Sunset Park. We know that the jobs at these locations are good paying jobs. This is a picture of Carlo. He's a yard manager at GCT. He's actually one of the folks we interviewed, so he was happy to be on our website, which is pretty cool. Additionally, some key insights, New York City remains a vibrant tug and barge economy, contributing about $300 million each year to the local economy. And of course, by moving a lot of this bulk freight in our barges, we're taking many, many trucks off of city streets. This is just an image of Newtown Creek, which sees a lot of aggregate and fuel, particularly. So what is the Maritime Vision? So it's moving to this sort of hub and spoke system. So as I mentioned, it's one of the projects is to continue developing SBMT in Sunset Park, which is a 72-acre facility. There's a picture shown. and as well as developing a barge terminal in the South Bronx to serve the Hunts Point Food Distribution Center. This is obviously very exciting because a lot of food products that are going up to the South Bronx to that food center arrive on a ship in New Jersey, and then is trucked up 95 across the GWB and then comes down to the city. That obviously creates a lot of congestion. Those volumes are increasing. That's an area that, there's some environmental justice issues, a lot of asthma. So this is a way to take those trucks off of city streets and get that freight on a barge up to the South Bronx. So it's very exciting. So we're in the process of sort of refining that, but we're moving forward. Of course, to do that, we'll be convening a regional barge council in the coming days and weeks that include various port authorities, maritime businesses, and shippers that could participate in this. There's actually a SUNY Maritime College event next Thursday that I should probably flag. It's going to be very well attended amongst the maritime community to announce some of these things, as well as a maritime administration grant that we received recently to push for this. So we will be working with those regional partners to advance the system from the Northeast down to around Baltimore. And then continue to promote dredging and improvement of New York City's inland waterways, which are of course vital to industrial businesses. And that's just a picture on the right of a truck, trailer, and barge service that we may be moving forward with. Rail sector. So rail infrastructure investments are continuing. The Metropolitan Rail Freight Council is a collection of the railroads that operate in our region. It's chaired by Congressman Nadler. EDC and the Port Authority, we convene the group to talk about collective rail projects. And then, of course, the Staten Island Railroad continues to do very well, something we reactivated several years ago to take not just Staten Island's trash away via rail car, but also moves a lot of international freight off of ships coming in from overseas. Volumes are increasing. Total traffic exceeded 70,000 carloads last year, which is great. And of course, wages are very good. Those are just pictures on the right of New York and Atlantic moving rail freight on Long Island, and below that is the Port Authority Cross Harbor car flow. So the vision for rail is to develop up to 5 transload facilities in Brooklyn and Queens. The idea here is that a lot of trains coming from the west stop in New Jersey, transload to trucks, and then those trucks make the crossings into the city. But we want to extend those trains into the city so that we're reducing crossings and reducing congestion. And so we'll be working with our partners to finalize various locations for this transloading. Of course, this would probably be food-related products and construction materials. So we're in the process of, as I mentioned, finalizing the feasibility of this. And then continuing to support the Port Authority's cross-harbor freight program, as I mentioned. Urban distribution, we know that overall demand is high for space. Private developers are saying this, everyone's saying it. It's definitely an issue. Vacancy rates are below 5%, particularly in food processing. It's below 2%. And the spaces that we do see, it's increasingly obsolete, or it's small, or there's few truck bays. It's just not great for a modern economy. And so I'll get to this in a second, but we'll be announcing various RFPs to develop new space, which is very exciting. And then we know that job generation is high. If it's e-commerce, there tends to be high job density as well as typical distribution, which is great for us. The image on the right is just a rendering of a building that will be going up on Westchester Creek up in the Bronx. And that's an example of multi-story warehousing that we're now seeing, which is very exciting. You see this overseas in places like Japan and Hong Kong. They're land constrained. But now we're finally getting to New York City because we're sort of getting to that point. This is, I think, one of 3 properties that are doing this now. This is just a map of the city and New Jersey. The blue dots are distribution facilities. The zoning is showed, so obviously residential is yellow with pink or purple being manufacturing. Interestingly, a lot of distribution still happens in places like Long Island City, North Brooklyn. And so we want to protect this and enhance what we have in the city. We also see a lot still in Sunset Park, the South Bronx, and the North Shore of Staten Island. And that being said, the idea is that we'll be creating freight hubs in about 5 places in the city for new distribution capacity. And these places will support a mix of e-commerce, distribution, and production. But really, we want to link these locations to multimodal infrastructure. If it's connected to a highway, that's great. If it's on a truck route, great. But we want to, for example, in the Bronx, make sure that that freight hub is connected to the barge, right? So that's a more sustainable mode of transportation. With Maspeth, the idea is that we build additional capacity, but you connect it to rail. Same thing in Sunset Park. There's a lot of great infrastructure. There's the First Avenue rail line. There's SBMT. So the idea is that the new warehouse that I'll get to in a sec will be connected to that. And I didn't set my timer. I should have set my timer. So if I'm over my 20 minutes, someone just wave at me. And then in Brooklyn, we've announced the release of an RFP to identify a developer for about 500,000 square feet of new space at the Brooklyn Army Terminal in Sunset Park, which is this. So there's 3 different parcels that we'd be developing. And this is obviously very exciting. Proposals are due, I think, in November. So this, again, is in response to that high demand for new space. Trucking, I've already mentioned this. Obviously, trucks move most of the freight, and it's often in oversized, overweight trucks that are using diesel. So the idea is that we push forward with cleaner fleets in the city. So we'll be deploying a suite of leasing and development and procurement strategies to become a leader in this. EDC, we have contracting ability. So if we have a long-term tenant, we can mandate that as part of a lease that a certain percentage of their fleet is using, LNG or CNG or electric trucks and that sort of thing. So we'll be moving forward with that. We'll also be identifying different locations in the city for alternative fueling. A lot of trucking fleets, they want to convert, but there's nowhere to charge. So we'll be identifying those locations as we move forward. Of course, aligning with Vision Zero and the DOT's Smart Truck Management Plan. Those are just examples of cleaner trucks. And then finally, the benefits, if you add them all up, we'd be creating up to 5,000 jobs, eliminating up to 40 million truck miles, 70,000 metric tons of GHG, and about 30,000 pounds of particulate matter, all leading to that beautiful blue sky that you see in the background. And then that's just the Cross Harbor car float that the Port Authority operates in the harbor. So with that, I don't know if we do questions, but that's all I've got.
Actually, we do questions.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, Ryan. I'll first ask the members if they have any questions for Ryan. Okay. Are there any questions from the audience? I think I saw you.
Ryan, you showed the barge, taking off the boat, putting on the truck, and leaving the barge.
Can you use the microphone, please? Thank you.
You take it off the container ship, you put it on a truck, you bring it over to the barge, taking it off again, then you're putting it on a barge, going to Hunts Point, wherever, and you're taking it off again, put it on a trailer. Why aren't you just putting it on a trailer, putting the whole trailer on the barge? And the other thing too is, how is the electronic log going to affect freight delivery in New York City?
So the ELD mandate, the electronic log device, that's mostly affecting the long haul truckers that have to log those hours. If it's a last mile drayage company, they're not necessarily impacted as much, which is your second question. First question about the numerous touches, obviously with the box, the container. We are going to be looking at potentially a vessel with a crane on board that has ballasts that basically can maintain the appropriate weights on board. So that may sort of tackle that issue of the touches in between the vessel and the barge itself. So that's something we're looking at. Yep.
Thank you. We had another no. We had another question. Can you please use the microphone?
You made a very quick statement about the growth in the amount of traffic that was, freight traffic that was anticipated, but I didn't quite catch it. Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. So we did a analysis of the amount of freight coming into the city today, as well as forecasting what could come in the future. And so we just used, I think it was NYMTC growth rates forecasted out to 2045, but for the 5 boroughs. And so that's how we got the 68% growth in freight volumes. 68.
68.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Were there any other questions? Brian, thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
All right, we've now arrived at the public participation portion of our meeting. We have set aside 15 minutes of the agenda to hear from registered speakers. We will hear from these speakers in the order they have registered to speak for the duration of the allotted time. We ask that all registered speakers limit your comments to relevant transportation and planning related items and to less than 3 minutes so we can hear from as many speakers as possible in the allotted time. If you have written comments, you can give them to me when you approach the microphone provided in front of the dais. I want to make note that we have received written comments from Mary Parison of Cures. These comments have been distributed to the members and will be included in the meeting synopsis. The first registered speaker is Mark Hurst, Executive Director of Long Island Contractors Association. Please approach the microphone. The topic will be Route 347.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Hurst. I'm the Executive Director of the Long Island Contractors Association. Today I'm going to address an item that's not on your agenda, but I hope it is on your radar. It is the greener New York Route 347 project. And I'm here today representing 18 regional organizations on this matter. And if I could just read into the record the names of these groups: the Long Island Contractors Association, the Long Island Association, the Long Island Federation of Labor, the Association for a Better Long Island, AAA of New York, the Building and Construction Trades of Nassau and Suffolk, the Hauppauge Industrial Association, the New York State Laborers, the Long Island Builders Institute, the Operating Engineers Local 138, the Long Island Chapter of the National Electrical Contractors Association, Local 46 of the Metallic Lathers, the American Council of Engineering Council, Consultants of New York, Teamsters Local 282, the New England Regional Council of Carpenters, the Laborers Local 1298, the Long Island Board of Realtors, and the Long Island Metro Business Action Organization. So we are representing these groups and to talk about Route 347. Greener Route 347 was a project that was planned by many people in this organization many years ago. It finally broke ground in the year 2010. And that moved forward, and it was very important because it involved the environment, bike paths, and all multimodal needs that were fought for in the area. And it also was one of the first DOT projects in the region to be a design-build project for part of the phases. We have concluded construction. Everything has been moving forward until December of this year when the project halted. The last shovel in the ground was in December. Only about 4 miles of the 15-mile corridor have been completed. And the issues that we face is the travel in that region. The posted speed limit is 55 miles per hour. The 70,000 vehicles that use that a day travel at less than half that speed. There is a need to continue the construction. The problem is, unfortunately, the money has run out. And what we're looking for and advocating is more funding. We have had support from the federal, state, county, and town local officials. We've had press events. They've all stood there and saying, we want this project to go forward. They recognize the regional significance of this job. The problem, of course, is dollars. And so what we're asking today is, first of all, to put it on your radar to understand the significance of this project. You are the professionals in the transportation field. The elected officials will ultimately turn to you and ask for your guidance and support. So we want you to be aware of this. Secondly, there is the The TIP program, you will have amendments that you offered earlier. We would like you to accelerate an upcoming phase. There's a PIN project for 347 on that. If the local TCC can look at that and advance that, I know you are fiscally constrained, we appreciate that. And lastly, we know the build project at the United States DOT has available funding for grants. Again, your expertise, you know how to work through the system. We are asking you to please look at that and see the funds that are available so we can move forward. Right now, according to DOT, the project will not begin until there's a new 5-year capital program. The existing program completes in 2 years, and with planning, we're looking at possibly a placeholder of no construction from December for another 5 years. That's unacceptable and intolerable for the people of the community. So we ask for your expertise. We want you to advocate on our behalf and continue the great work that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will note that this concludes our public participation portion of the meeting. We will now work through the action items. Our first action item is a meeting synopsis. The first action item is to accept the August 9th, 2018 meeting synopsis, which was available on the sign-in table. I'm requesting all members to announce their name and the agency you represent when you make a motion or second a motion. Motion to accept the August 9th, 2018 meeting synopsis.
Naomi Klein, Westchester County, so moved.
Naomi Klein moves a motion. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Bob Brickman, Nassau County, second.
Bob Brickman seconds the motion. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you. The next action item is to adopt resolution number 472, setting urbanized area targets and supporting statewide targets for performance measures related to asset conditions and system performance. Copies of all the resolutions for this meeting are available on the sign-in table. I will ask Young Hai Zhang to introduce the resolution.
Good afternoon, everyone. PFAC Chairman and members, Resolution 472 with its supporting information, which you have in your meeting package, seeks to address some aspects of transportation performance management requirement as they pertain to this MPO. In May 2018, New York State DOT submitted its target for pavement and bridges and system performance measures to the FHWA. Under federal regulations, NYMTC has 180 days after this date to set its target by either developing its own or supporting the state's target. NYMTC members have chosen to support the state targets. The performance measures and targets are fully described in the Resolution 472 and its Attachment 1. Additionally, NYMTC is required to develop a congestion mitigation and air quality, or CMAQ, performance plan for the CMAQ congestion measures and emission measures. This plan must be submitted to the state by October 1st, 2018, so that it could be included in the state's first performance report to the FHWA. We are therefore asking you to adopt Resolution 472, supporting the state's pavement and bridges, system performance, and CMAQ targets, and at the same time adopting the CMAQ performance plan as described in Attachment 2 and authorizing its submission to NYSDOT. Thank you.
We have a motion to adopt resolution number 472, setting urbanized area targets and supporting statewide targets for performance measures related to asset conditions and system performance.
Pat Gurdon, Rockland County.
Pat Gurdon moves the motion.
Second, Chris Chatterton, Suffolk County.
Chris Chatterton seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? This motion passes. Thank you. The next action item is to adopt resolution number 473, NYMTC's 2018 Title VI program. I'll ask Jerry Bogas to introduce the resolution.
Good afternoon. Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and subsequent federal legislation direct the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, disability, age, gender, or income status, in programs and activities receiving federal funds, including transportation funds. The U.S. DOT, it's on. Okay. Sorry about that. The U.S. DOT requires public agencies, including metropolitan planning organizations, to develop Title VI programs that address how the agencies or organizations integrate non-discrimination practices into the planning process that they're responsible for. Through the FTA's Title VI Circular, C4702.18, U.S. DOT provided guidance for the Title VI programs of MPOs. Using this guidance, NYMTC prepared its initial Title VI program back in September of 2014 on resolution number 387. But now, in conjunction with its most recent Regional Transportation Plan, which was adopted in 2017, and Congestion Management Status Report adopted at the same time, NYMTC is now updating, or has updated, its Title VI program, which is attached to this resolution. The program itself lays out organizational responsibilities under Title VI and the Environmental Justice Executive Order, and it does include a geospatial assessment of planning process outcomes for the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council. We would urge that you adopt this resolution and the new Title VI program.
Thank you, Jerry. Do I have a motion to adopt resolution number 473, NYMTC's 2018 Title VI program?
Anne McGrain, New York City DOT.
Anne McGrain, New York City DOT moves the motion. Do I have a second?
Naomi Klein, Westchester County.
Naomi Klein, Westchester County, seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you. The next action item is to adopt resolution number 474, distribution of federal fiscal year 2018 federal transit funding. I'll ask Jerry Bogas to introduce the resolution.
So federal transit funding is allocated in the country to urbanized areas, and NYMTC's planning area contains a large portion of one urbanized area and small portions of two others. These urbanized areas encompass areas in New York State as well as the states of New Jersey and Connecticut. So the states come together when the funding is allocated and come to agreement on the split between the different states. Once that's done, NYMTC sub-allocates these funds to designated recipients of federal transit funding within its planning area. And we want to do this in a timely fashion so that funding can be used. This is for federal fiscal year 2018. There is a side agreement between the Metropolitan Transportation Authority and New York City DOT involving the MTA bus operations in New York City. That will be decided at a later time and communicated to the Federal Transit Administration. This agreement we're asking for adoption prior to that other agreement being made. Additionally, the MTA has agreed to exchange part of its distribution of Section 5307 funds for Section 5337 high-intensity motor bus funds that are available in the MTA planning area. And all that is shown on the attached table for the resolution. So at this point, we're asking that you adopt this resolution so that the federal transit dollars can be used as quickly as possible for federal fiscal year 2018.
Thank you, Jerry. Do I have a motion to adopt resolution number 474, distribution of federal fiscal year 2018 federal transit funding?
Motion, Chris Chatterton, Suffolk County.
Chris Chatterton moves the motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Putnam County, Sandra Fusco.
Sandra Fusco seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. The next action item is to adopt resolution number 475, amendments to the federal fiscal year 2018 to 2045 Regional Transportation Plan, Plan 45, to maintain fiscal constraints. I'll ask Leslie Forger to introduce the resolution.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Here to talk about Resolution 475. What is Resolution 475? It's an amendment that will update Table 7.2 of Chapter 7 of the current plan, which is Plan 2045. Why do we need it? Well, since we last updated this table, the TIP, or the Transportation Improvement Program, has changed. So in order to maintain fiscal constraint, NYMTC staff strongly recommends we adopt this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Do I have a motion to adopt resolution number 475, amendments to the federal fiscal year 2018 to 2045 Regional Transportation Plan, Plan 45, to maintain fiscal constraint?
So moved. Bob Brickman, Nassau County.
Bob Brickman moves the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Anne McGrain, New York City DOT.
Anne McGrain seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. Thank you. Thank you, Leslie. This is the final resolution of the day. To adopt resolution number 476, amendments to the state fiscal year 2018 to 2019 Unified Planning Work Program. I will ask Setu Allen to introduce the resolution.
Good afternoon. So PFAC resolution number 476. It has several actions. The first set of actions refers to a resource sharing agreement between two agencies, the City Planning and City Department of Transportation. The other actions strictly for City DOT refer to adding previously programmed projects that were not completed in state fiscal year 2017-2018 into the current program for completion. Some additional actions also involve adding funds to certain projects to complete tasks that were not completed as expected during the prior state fiscal year. And finally, Putnam County is requesting to add an additional study to the UPWP, the Putnam County Intersection Planning and Feasibility Study, which is a supplement to their recently completed Commercial Corridors project, which was funded in last year's UPWP. NYMTC staff has reviewed these actions and found them to be consistent with the plan, and we request that you adopt this resolution.
Thank you, Setu. Do I have a motion to adopt resolution number 476, amendments to the state fiscal year 2018 to 2019 Unified Planning Work Program?
Motion, Anne McGrain, New York City DOT.
Anne McGrain moves the motion. Is there a second?
Naomi Klein.
Naomi Klein
Westchester County.
seconds the motion. Thank you. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes. The next PFAC meeting is scheduled to be held on Thursday, October 28th, here at NYMTC's office at 25 Beaver Street in Lower Manhattan. I'm sorry, do this. Okay, October 18th. Oh, October 18th. Here in Lower Manhattan at NYMTC's office. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Chris Chatterton, Suffolk County.
Chris Chatterton moves the motion. Is there a second?
Second, Matt Gurdon, Rockland County.
Rockland County, Matt Gurdon, Rockland County seconds the motion. Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? We are adjourned. Thank you.